Hi, my name's April Fitzpatrick. I run a history page on Facebook called The Antiquarian. I love history of all kinds, anything that has any bit of age or antiquity to it. So I spend my free time searching that out, researching, taking photos and sharing it with other people that may be interested. Well, Soviet, it actually has very negative connotations because of what happened in Russia in 1917, but the word Soviet just means Workers' Council. So Limerick had a general strike and they set up a committee to manage and control running the city during the time of the strike. That was what became known as the Limerick Soviet. There was a man named Robert Byrne. He worked in the post office, but he had connections with the IRA and he was at the negative attention of the British authorities. Hi, we're at Irish Town Walls here. This is where Robert Byrne's house was. There was a raid on his home and he was arrested and sentenced to 12 months imprisonment for possession of a firearm. Now, while he was in prison, he didn't like the conditions and the treatment against prisoners in the prison, so he decided to protest against that. Limerick's Trade Council heard about the conditions in the prison and they issued a statement condemning it. The people of Limerick heard this from the Limerick's Trade Council and they decided that enough was enough and they were going to break Robert Byrne out of prison. So they gathered together a group and devised a plan to break into the workhouse under visiting hours in the guise of other visitors, inform Robert that they were going to relieve him from his imprisonment and take him to safety. Unfortunately, it kind of went down not according to plan. Robert was shot, as well as an RIC officer who both ended up dying. He had his funeral 3 days later on the 9th of April in Limerick City, and I believe 15,000 people or up to 20,000 people lined the streets for him, and I think that really unsettled British authorities to see the Irish people come out in force with very little organisation. So that must have worried them a bit what could happen if they had been organised. The imposition of martial law meant that people couldn't travel into or out of the city without being verified by the Brigadier General, who was a British authority in Limerick City. It also meant that they couldn't procure or carry food down the street publicly. So in reaction to this, the Limerick people and the Limerick Trades Council opposed it and decided to call a general strike. That became the Soviet. Cleves was the biggest employer in Limerick at the time. They had 600 workers in their plant just outside the city in Lansdowne, but they also owned about 15 other factories as creameries, mills, bakeries, all that. So between the 15 factories, they employed thousands of people. The first people to walk out during the general strike and during the Soviet were the 600 workers of Cleves. It eventually came to an end when the Catholic Church and the mayor had written to the strike committee. The strike committee then asked the people of Limerick, anybody who did not need a permit could go back to work and essentially bow out at the protest. But a couple of days later that was followed up with another statement to issue that all work should resume. And a couple of days after all work resumed, the martial law was taken away from the city and regular service resumed all around. Well, I think it showed people in Limerick what they could achieve.